So I have a client whose nephew was just drafted into the NFL, first round pick, and he has like one more year of college. He went to a Division I school, a big powerhouse school. I'm not going to say the name of the school or anything, but it's an exciting time for the family for sure. You know, they've seen him grow, develop as a player, as a young man, and they are all so proud of him. So I asked, what was his son's or his nephew's major in college, and he said his nephew growing up always wanted to be a dentist. He was a straight A student, honor roll, great academics, just so scholar athlete, and he always wanted to be a dentist. But when he got to college, his advisor told him, okay, you graduated high school with a 4.0. Now that you're in college and on that next level of your athletic ability, you're going to be concentrating on football 80% of the time, and those classes, those pre-med classes or whatever, are going to take up a lot of time. And I don't recommend that you major in that. I recommend that you major in I believe business real estate, or real estate in business, or something to that effect, so that when you graduate and at the end of your football career, you can own a dentist office and have hired dentists, to do the work. And, a lot of you may be saying, yeah, that's great advice. That's a good thing. Oh, that's perfect. But it's not, because, he's talking to an 18-year-old who, yes, aspires to play professional football, but who has always wanted to be a dentist. And you can absolutely do both. So just rewinding, when my center child first started college, or was getting ready to start college, she wanted to always go into real estate. My children, they've been going to real estate closings for investment properties with us since they were babies. And this one in particular was 20 months old when she went to her first closing. So she's always been around real estate, always talks about real estate, and that's what she wanted to go into. However, she also always wanted to be a dermatologist. And I always felt like, the medical field was somewhere in her life. There's just something about her hands that just seem like they are healing. Things that she touched, they tend to grow and thrive. And I was like, you have the hands of someone in the medical profession. And so she wanted to go and become a dermatologist at some point. But at first she said, I want to go into real estate and do my thing. So I wanted to see how that could be combined. So I had mentioned a while ago that my husband and I were part of a group called KIP, Knowledge is Power. And we used to gather together once a month. It was with other couples, professionals, and such, that and we would talk about finances, investments. We would play cash flow, Robert Kiyosaki's game, and that game and those conversations propelled all of us to go into investing in real estate. And one of the people that was in the group, who was a dear friend and a soror of mine, she was a ophthalmologist, still is an ophthalmologist. And she, of course, had her own practice and everything. And so one of her first properties that she purchased was a commercial property to put her ophthalmologist company in, or office in. She bought a huge piece of property, had 2 levels, and the second level she actually rented out to other businesses and nonprofit organizations. She's close to a professional football stadium, so during the season she has been able to rent out parking slots during the home games, so people have season passes to park in her parking lot, which is another stream of income and brilliant. So I wanted my daughter to talk with her about owning your own building, your own real estate, as well as be going into real estate and being a doctor. And my parents' businesses, they always owned the building that they had their businesses in. Commercial property, when you have a business, to own it is tremendous, and especially if you have no mortgage, because then you don't have to worry about rent or a mortgage payment or anything like that, and just the upkeep, and your money that you make is going to be even more. more. And so I always knew the value of owning the building that your business was in. So my daughter, we called her one day, and she had a daughter that is a few years older than my daughter. So I also was checking in on her daughter, like, how was she doing? And, a lot of times when you are growing up in an environment, a particular type of professional environment, you kick and scream during it, and you vow never to go into that line of work. Just like when I was growing up and my parents owned their own business, I used to look at other people whose parents worked like for corporate, thinking, man, I wish my parents had a corporate job, because they are able to, have their weekends off and take vacations during regular vacation time. But I didn't see the value of the flexibility and the no ceiling in terms of how much you can earn having your own business until I was much older, and, and I'm no looking back. But at any rate, her daughter did not want to go into the medical field. So she majored in maybe finance or something like that. But after graduating and working in the industry that she went to school for, she was still drawn to the medical profession, because she had been around that all her life. And so she decided a few years after graduating college that she wanted to go into the medical field. But because she didn't have any of those prerequisite science courses, because of what her major was in undergrad, she had to almost go back to undergrad again to take those prerequisite science classes. So my friend, she told my daughter, I don't recommend, since you have two different things that you really are interested in, I recommend that you do the first thing that you love, let that be your major, and then minor in the other. And she said, it sounds like real estate, marketing, and business is your passion. And then, I recommend that you minor in the sciences, so that later on, if you decide you want to go into dermatology, you can always pivot quicker because you have those prerequisites under your belt. But in the meantime, you can be building up your real estate portfolio, working in real estate in the business and doing it that way. So if you determine you want to be a dermatologist, you can own your building that your office is in. And I thought that was wonderful advice. My daughter greatly appreciated and adhered to what she had said. So when this client told me about his nephew and what the advisor had told him, I said, I hope, as he was telling me, I was thinking, I hope he told him to minor in science. And he didn't. He minored in communication. And so I told him, I said, that advisor misled your nephew, because he absolutely, should have told him somehow to stay connected to the sciences if being a dentist is truly your passion. Yeah, he may have a very successful NFL career. Even if he does, he still may want to pivot into being a dentist. Just owning the office, that's not the same as doing the practical work. And there's a reason that he wants to do it. I don't know the reason, but for him to have grown up wanting to do this, there is a reason. And for him to kill that dream too, why can't you have both, instead of and or? And so, I was telling the uncle, because, they're all thinking, oh, that was wonderful, and yeah, communication helped because he's doing these interviews. Listen, when you play in sports, you interview all the time. You don't have to major in it to understand how to effectively answer those questions. If you have challenges with your speech, with how to communicate, maybe, but you don't even have to major in that. You can take courses for that. And, I was just like, wow, what's going on? People, it's like a shot in the dark. People take it for granted or just assume it's just that easy. Oh, okay, yeah, I was drafted. It takes time to even, it's so competitive until, what if it doesn't work out for him? And I didn't say that to the uncle. I don't want to kill the dream, but what if it doesn't? What does he have to fall back on that he also loves? What if it does work out? But then I said, when he retires, he's still going to be a young man. My husband retired after 10 years and he was a young man. He was 32 years old. So, now what? There's professional athletes that may have played for 10, 15 years, retire, go on to law school, go on to medical school still, because that was part of their professional path, because you still have your life to live, you know. And I just wanted to come on here because I understand not everyone has that social capital where you can pick up the phone or even know a doctor that also owns their building that their business is in and can call them up to ask for advice. So for my channel, I'm giving this advice and hopefully it's helpful to someone. If you know of someone whose child is going into college and they are also, you know, aspiring to be a professional athlete, help them with their major. Don't let them just major in basket weaving or, you know, just something nonsensical. Yeah, they're going to make the school a lot of money. That's why his advisor said, oh, 80% of your time is going to be playing football. Well, how is that going to benefit him? It did, because he was drafted in the first round, but he also still has to make the team year after year until he becomes vested and still play, stack his money, make sure that the money he makes lasts him the rest of his life. Be wise with it. You know, he has a tremendous amount of aunts and uncles and first cousins. You know, be very mindful of, you know, how he's handling his money. And there's always life after sports. You know, when I did Blog Sports Talk Radio, and, you know, my channel on that station was Real Talk with Coach Sherry, and it was Talk to Me Sports Radio. It was a group of different, you know, people that had different time slots, but and they talked about sports and the games and scores and players and such. But my topics were about life after sports. And I talked to retired athletes, maybe athletes that didn't make it to the next level, but played hard, and, you know, sports still impacted their second profession. And so I talked to them about what did that look like? How did sports support them? What was their second profession? You know, what were they doing now that they've retired or what have you? And, you know, it's something that some of them didn't think about, the life after, and then it was something that some of them did think about and were very intentional on their moves. You know, you have to have those goals beyond, and that's one of the things that I love about my husband. When we started dating and he talked about the things he wanted to do, accomplish after he retired, and the fact that, you know, I met him during his rookie year and all he said was, if I can make it 10 years, I'll be good. And he did. And all the things that he dreamed about, that his goals were, you know, for beyond the sport, beyond the field, the game on the field, because life is a game too, right? He accomplished. And so that's important, to set those goals, not to wake up one day because maybe you got injured, maybe you were released, maybe they drafted someone in your position and you let it get in your head and they beat you out, and now you're looking and you're trying to figure out what's next. No, you have to always think about what the next is, leveling up, doing better, staying relevant in some capacity, because that game is such a young man's sport until you have to know that you have to think about the what's next. And advisors need to really tap into the passion and the you know, the things that these young people coming into them want to do. And even before that, the parents, the teachers, when they're younger in elementary, middle, high school, their coaches need to talk about what else would you do beyond the sport, you know? And going to college is a great opportunity to increase your social capital. Look around, who's doing what you want to do, tap into them, maybe do an internship with them, grab them up as a mentor. And I'm talking about people off the field. So again, if this is not for you, but someone you know, share this information, because it's real out here. There's so many people that are broken. There's so many people that are disappointed, that are shattered because they were not able to fulfill that big dream of being that professional athlete, that big dream of being that star, you know, for their favorite team or a team that, you know, drafted them or whatever, because they're playing with groans, you know, when they get into the pros, and they're the top 1% of the top 1%. You know, only 1% of college graduates or college players make it to the next level, to the pro level, and only 1% of them stay beyond their first year, and only 1% of them make it to become vested. So it's a very, very low percentage. So you have to continuously think about the what's next. All right, everyone, listen, I've been in the lab brewing up some great things, and I cannot wait to share them with you. I'm putting together some signature classes because I know I've been sharing some job opportunities, but a lot of you are reaching out and saying, Coach Sherry, I really want to start my own business. And that's what I started out as a marketing coach for people in business. So I'm going to be putting together some courses on specific business and how to start them from the rooter to the tutor. And these are not going to be published on YouTube. They're going to be, elite. They're going to be exclusive opportunities, and I'll share more about them in a little bit. But y'all, I just came back from a 36-hour trip to the city of Philadelphia. Had a phenomenal time. I was a presenter, a speaker at a forum that they were having on workforce development and apprenticeships, and it was a wonderful event. That was one of the best 36 hours that I've spent professionally in a long time. It was a whirlwind for sure. The city of Philadelphia is a city of brotherly love, and I always feel love when I'm there. That is my home away from home. I went to school not too far from Philadelphia, and it was just a dope experience. So you'll be seeing some videos and shorts and photos from that as well. If you're new to this channel, be sure to subscribe. I hope you like what you see. If you do, be sure to give this a thumbs up. I will be back. This channel is about workforce development, career readiness, entrepreneurship, real life, real issues, and real talk. It's been my pleasure sharing this information with you. Be sure to practice every day. Every day, practice hard. So when you get in, you will always play to win. It's been my pleasure. I am Coach Sherry.